the fundamental thing is, are we measuring what all this stuff is doing to actually help us either build the brand or sell product? I think if you forget about that, I think you get lost.
Are you a fitness-loving foodie? Then Defy Snacks is for you. Defy offers real, high-quality chocolate you love, combined with functional ingredients, giving you as much as 26 grams of protein per bag, so you can be both a little bit bad and a little bit good at the same time. As a female-owned brand, Defy dedicates a portion of its profits to other women-owned businesses. Currently sold in the US, you can find us on defy.snacks.com and follow us on social at Defy Snacks.
Hello and welcome to the Shiny New Object podcast. My name is Tom Ollerton. I'm the founder of Automated Creative, the creative effectiveness ad tech platform. And this is a podcast about the future of data-driven marketing. Every week or so, I have the pleasure and the privilege of interviewing one of our industry's leaders about where this industry is going. And this week is no different. I'm on a call with Brett Marchand, who is CEO of Plus Company. Brett, for anyone who doesn't know who you are and what you do, can you give them a bit of background?
Yeah, good to see you, Tom, or talk to you at least. I'm the CEO of Plus Company. Owns a bunch of agencies, mostly North American wide, but also We Are Social, which a lot of people know. I think you know a little bit about. And I started as a brand. I'm Canadian, born and raised in Canada. I started at P&G, so I was a brand marketer. I went from P&G to Campbell Soup to Molson. I did a fairly famous campaign when I was at Molson, and then I became an ad guy. And most of that has been at what was called Cassette and now has become Plus Company. So I sort of, started running an office and then eventually the country and then eventually the company.
Fantastic. And what a journey. So, okay, you've been brand side, agency side, you come up through the ranks to the top job. What's been your biggest screw up to date, Brett? What has been that mistake you made where you were red-faced and you were head in hand, but actually looking back, you're glad it happened?
I made a lot, by the way. I think, but interestingly enough, I had a section of my career which was actually between being a client and in the agency world, where I started a tech company with 3 partners. And we basically made the software that allowed you to do customization in the footwear and apparel business. So if you've ever been on Nike ID, you get on, you design a shoe for yourself, and then it magically gets manufactured and sent to you. So in 1999, actually, we started developing the software for companies to be able to do that, whether it was for a person on the other end, or it was for companies, because retailers like to have sort of unique items. And we built that, launched it, spent a lot of my own money, my partner's money, and investors' money to build it. The .com crash happened, which then impacted everything, and it was a miserable failure, and I lost everything, literally everything. So, but I also, we had 40 or 50 employees who all lost their jobs pretty quickly. That was a pretty miserable failure.
So what did that teach you?
Well, I learned a bunch of things about that. I mean, first of all, timing's everything, and particularly with technology, I think it's really important because, now, everyone uses this kind of technology and software. You just, you go on a site and customize something, and it just happens. But at the time, internet speeds just weren't ready for a product like that. But also the VC community, and obviously this, the .com hysteria. So a bunch of things were happening, and I think it's not just that timing's everything. It's also be extremely careful not to jump on the horse because everyone else is riding fast, and that you have to be very careful that when the wind for everyone is blowing in the same direction, that maybe it's going to shift.
And so what was your mental process for picking yourself up from that, right? Because that's hard, man. Like 40, 50 people, all your money, all of your best mates' money, and sounds pretty much it was out of your hands. Maybe we're a bit early, perhaps, to your own admission. But that's got to be really intellectually and financially crushing. How did you pick yourself up? Do you just shrug it off and say whatever, or was it a bit more complicated than that?
No, it was definitely more complicated. I mean, I was lucky. My wife was working. I mean, she was carrying the load, not just working, but also we had 2 young kids at the time, and we had to get a rented house, and she was paying for that, etc. I think I was off work for 3 months, and then interestingly enough, I then went into the ad business. So I was a bit depressed for a couple of months, because I felt like a failure, and I was the CEO, and the company was my idea in the first place, and I was sort of unfortunately driving a lot of this sort of, spending and not putting on the brakes probably soon enough, et cetera. So, I think I thought it was 3 months and I was okay, but in hindsight, it was probably 3 years. I went through that. Luckily, I ended up at my first agency role was at one of the Lowe agencies. It was actually a very good agency that was bought by Frank Lowe called Roche McCauley and Partners. Jeffrey Roche, who was the founder, was just a visionary creative guy, and we did really well. And so that probably helped more than anything, that I found a new career. And I learned a lot from him, and we did really well together. So yeah, I think that's what helped, but it took a long time.
It must have been interesting you going into an agency environment with all of that experience and that pain and anguish, because you must have been bulletproof. When people were complaining about a bad situation, you must have been like, well, that's not a bad situation. Let me tell you about bad situations. But anyway, I would love to know another time. I'd love to know more about that story. So let's bring it all back to data-driven marketing specifically. So what is your best bit of data-driven marketing advice? You've been brand side, you've been startup side, and now agency side. What bit of advice do you find yourself as being true and find yourself sharing most often?
I guess I have believed this for a long time. When I started at Procter, I was working on marketing mix modeling, and this is in the 80s. I have always thought that the most important thing you have to measure is whether it's working or not. Like at the end of the day, advertising and marketing is about selling stuff to make money. And there's so much data out there. And by the way, a lot of it is really good for generating insights, finding a competitive advantage, figuring out, what an individual consumer wants. I mean, listen, I started basically a company that was about mass customization, but I always think that the fundamental thing is, are we measuring what all this stuff is doing to actually help us either build a brand or sell product? And people forget that. I think often I have discussions with clients that have huge data teams. They're doing an immense amount of measurement and data science and using AI. But at the end of the day, they don't actually know whether it's having an impact or not. And I think if you forget about that, I think you get lost.
And what's the one question to ask to work out if you are measuring the right things?
Is there a KPI that's meaningful for your business, and are you measuring it in a comprehensive way so that you understand all the things you're doing in marketing are actually making an impact on that KPI? Most people can't answer that question, by the way.
No, of course. My version of that is: are you going to do something differently based on this bit of data that you're capturing about your marketing? If you go, that's interesting, then it's just noise, right? But if it tells you something where you're like, right, okay, I now know what I need to go and do, then it's right. I mean, that's what we talk about at Automated Creative a lot, is people don't need more data, more decks, and more dashboards. They need inspiration, right? You need data that tells you what the next thing you should do. You should be hands in the air going, yes, brilliant, this is the thing I need to do. And if your data is not driving inspiration, it's just noise, then yeah, to your point, you're just collecting a bunch of things that don't tell you that the business is moving in the right direction or not.
I worked at P&G. It was really interesting. I mean, it's really a great company in many, many ways, P&G, at least. And the 5 years I spent there, I still use what I learned in that company every single day. I really do. And when I got there, it was about brand share. It was about market share in your category. That was fundamentally what we measured. The first thing they made you do as a brand assistant was write a monthly review, and it was all about market share. Like, how did your market share? How did things impact that market share? The good, the bad, what did you learn, et cetera. And I always just found that super valuable. And I think it's a reason that company's done so well for hundreds of years. Is that, it's super focused on one thing. So I learned a huge lesson at P&G about that.
This episode of the Shiny New Object podcast is brought to you in partnership with MadFest. Whether it's live in London or streamed online to the global marketing community, you can always expect a distinctive and daring blend of fast-paced content, startup innovation pitches, and unconventional entertainment from MadFest events. You'll find me causing trouble on stage, recording live versions of this podcast, and sharing a beer with the nicest and most influential people in marketing. Check it out at www.madfestlondon.com. So your shiny new object is the democratization of brands. So when you said this, wasn't quite sure what you meant. You've explained it to me now, so I would love it if you could explain what that is to the audience so we can get into it.
Yeah, so if you think about, P&G is probably a good example, right? We all know that brands started because people were manufacturing things and they wanted to, they were better, and therefore they branded them because they wanted to tell you that it's worth, buying this thing and paying more for it because, it's a product of quality and consistency and all those things. And so, the ability to manufacture something and do it in the right way was the first thing that made a huge difference to, brands. And then you needed a lot of money to be able to talk about it, right? Because distributing that message was expensive. In the early days, it was through newspapers. And of course, it's, expanded greatly through the decades. I think everything has changed when it comes to that. So, manufacturing tariffs right now aside for a second, almost anyone can manufacture. You need very little money to manufacture something in usually countries like Vietnam and China and other places and be able to ship it almost anywhere, at least on the product side of things. Or you can start a consulting company overnight, or you guys have started a company with two of you. So, the barriers there are much lower. Second of all, the internet changed everything because you could talk to a giant swath of the world, again, without having to spend millions of dollars on production and TV or some other areas. And then e-commerce actually changed that even more because you didn't have to pay for listing fees. You didn't need a whole lot of money. You didn't have to be able to, get Walmart to be convinced to bring put your product on their shelves, et cetera. And then, of course, the pandemic accelerated all of that because people were at home, so they couldn't go to retailers, and they were in front of their computers and their phones to buy things. And, and now AI is accelerated it even more because you can actually develop a brand. You can come up with a logo. You can design the product. You can build a website. You don't even have to pay somebody to code anymore. So I just think it has fundamentally turned this idea of brand on its ear. I still am a huge fan of brands like, Nike and McDonald's and, Adidas and I still love Mercedes and Audis. I think they're great, but you can build products. Some of the best products in those categories and other categories are actually brands that have come out of nowhere in only the last year or two. And I think the environment, the infrastructure, all these changes that I just talked about have created this new era of almost anyone can build and distribute and market a brand today.
Thanks for the little history of why that all came about. That was really nicely put together. However, I'm going to push you on this, right? I think it's really easy for people to make things that look like brands as opposed to actually being brands, right? So, you and I throw up the Tom and Brett Burger Company, right? And you can throw up a website without any coding. You can order some cheap patties online and get delivered to our burger restaurant. We can do a logo, make T-shirts, business cards, the whole thing. Probably even get ChatGPT to design the menu and all the variants and the pricing and stuff. And you will look like a brand. Like you'll have all of the hallmarks of a brand, but until you have that thing where it's the mental association, availability, and the emotion associated with those things that make up a brand, i.e., the logo, the shop, the whatever, however it's distributed. And I think that that's the kind of curse of AI is it's given people the impression that they're doing the thing that works because it looks like the thing that works, but actually it's not actually doing the job. So yeah, you've got a logo that looks like a logo, but unless anyone recognizes that logo, the logo is not doing the job.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, it's my latest shiny new object. It's one of the things I've been thinking a lot about. I mean, not just for the last year, but for the last few years. But I agree with you. I'm not sure that means success. I think actually, if you're a big brand, if you're a Procter & Gamble or Adidas or an Audi, I think you have the right to be successful. I think it changes the way you have to think about things, though. I think if you ignore all these other brands and this democratization of brands, I think you do it at your own peril. I think Starbucks is a good example. I have been a huge Starbucks fan from the first time I went into a Starbucks in 1983 or 1993. I always thought what Howard Schultz was doing there was absolutely brilliant on a branding standpoint. But meanwhile, as you're in London, there's a coffee shop, on every corner. And a lot of them are marketing in a way that they never could before. They've got apps that you can order from. You can see how they're rated versus the other coffee shops, never mind the Starbucks around the corner on whatever you're looking at, Google Maps or Yelp or et cetera. And I think it's hurt the Starbucks brand. I think they have been challenged in a way that they haven't been in a long time. And this is the reason why. I don't think anyone's talking about it, but I think that's actually the fundamental issue for Starbucks right now.
I think about coffee too much. Not that I'm a massive coffee aficionado, but there's a certain amount of brands that I think what they do is they raise the floor, right? So before things like Starbucks, right, you had, certainly when I was growing up, you had Nescafe granules, right? And if you wanted a coffee, that's kind of what you did. There wasn't really any, maybe you had a French press or something if you were a bit fancy, but generally speaking, it was that. And then all coffee shop coffee was pretty much the same thing. And then Starbucks came along and kind of made that, the base level coffee, the everyman coffee, like so much better. And whereas now, like what you look at something like Blank Street, right? And they've kind of taken it up a notch, they kind of lift that thing up. And then Nespresso, they sort of made home coffee just that little bit better. Some might argue, I wouldn't argue, but there you go. So you get these brands that kind of lift the floor. They make the base thing better. Some brands are like, I don't know, kind of Ferraris or whatever, that just kind of make the best car better. Tesla, you could argue, and all that kind of stuff. So in that world, what is the role of the democratized brand? Is if everyone can make a nice looking logo and website and do an order through an app and all the rest of it, like what's really going to matter? Is it creativity, or is it timing, or is it strategy? If everyone can make a brand overnight for no money and drop ship it from China, God, and that all starts again, if it does, what's really going to matter? Because if the playfield's been leveled, something's going to win. So who's going to win?
And creativity is a huge part of that. And right now it seems to be less important. I think a lot of brands have sort of rushed to the bottom of the funnel because of all the things we just talked about, right? Because of what's happened with e-commerce, what's happened with other brands, what happened with the pandemic, as the world moved online. because of the pressure on delivering against sales objectives, et cetera. But I think brand and creativity, and what is your purpose, and what's it, how do you fit into people's lives, and how you talk about that in a meaningful way, I think is one of the most important things.
I think one of the scariest things I saw, and I'd love to get your view on this. I'm doing a podcast challenge with my nephew at the minute, where we listen to a new podcast show every day for a year. Not like a series, but a whole new production every day, which has been quite eye-opening. And I found this podcast called like Cool Things to Do with ChatGPT, and it said like, here's 5 businesses you can start with ChatGPT tomorrow. And I got any ideas, Brett? Can you pick 2 of those 5?
Another ChatGPT AI company? No. I don't know.
It's a tough question. The first one was a branding agency. They're like, look, you've got ChatGPT. You can just set up a branding agency tomorrow. It can design websites, it can design logos, it can come up with names. And I was like, oh no, you can't. You can do something that looks like a branding agency, but it designs the artifact of a brand, but doesn't design a brand. And then the other one, and this is like so telling. I don't know how popular this show is. It might not be popular at all. But the other thing was an email marketing agency. And like, I'm sure you've seen your inbox, like everyone else's, it's just explode with people constantly trying to hook you in, going, hey, Brett, quick question. Or like, do you like making money, Brett? And all the stuff that and you've probably got 50 of them in your inbox as we've been speaking, as do I.
I delete at least 2 every morning.
Yeah, it's crazy. But someone must be making money out of this. It's madness. But do you know what I mean? They don't and email marketing in a B2B context is very hard. And that is very difficult to get right, as I'm sure you'll have attested to.
But let's be honest, right? Like, being able to start a branding agency has never had very high barriers ever. Like, there's, I don't know what the number is, but there must be hundreds of thousands of brand agencies in the world, and have been for decades. Like, successful ones, whole different story, as we know. But there's not that many barriers to being able to start a branding agency. And listen, AI makes it even easier. I agree, but that does not mean you're going to be successful, because there are, many, many other things that you have to do to be able to run a business like that successfully, but also be able to help clients and especially big clients and enterprise clients do the things that they need to do to differentiate themselves, particularly in a world of democratization of brands. So I think ChatGPT is, I'm not sure that they're right about that.
Well, look, Brett, unfortunately, I've got 10 more questions, but we're out of time now, frustratingly. So if someone wanted to get in touch with you about the things we've talked about today, where's a good place to do that? And what does make a message that you will respond to? Email me,
brett.marchand@pluscompany.com. That's the best way. And don't try and sell me something. And I'll respond, I promise.
Brett, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, great to do it. Thank you, Tom.
Hi. Just before you go, I'd really appreciate it if you could take the time to write a review of the Shiny New Object podcast on Apple Podcasts or iTunes, whatever it's called these days, or whichever podcast provider you use. We're an indie podcast, so it would go a long way for us if you could just share the word and give us a bit of a support on those channels. That would just be fantastic. If you haven't got time, that's also cool. And yeah, if you could tell your colleagues about the podcast, and also, if possible, don't forget to subscribe. And I'd love to hear your feedback. If you'd like to speak on the podcast or be a guest, or you think I'm asking the wrong questions, anything, I'd be super interested to hear what you think. So please email me at tom@automatedcreative.net. That's TOM at, I'm not going to bother spelling it. Anyway, you'll work it out. Thanks so much.